Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to another Zazi video. My name is Lewis and I am the social action lead here at Project Zazi, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about my top 5 books on race, representation and black history. Now, this was the hardest thing I've had to do in a while because for me it's impossible to have a top 5 anything, whether it's music, books, movies, MCs, whatever it is hard for me to do top 5 because my lists are always changing. So right now, these are my top 5 reads on race, representation, and black history. But just putting it out there, they're probably going to change at some point. But that's the nature of reading, learning, expanding. So I'm going to take you through my top 5 right now. 3 of which are actual physical copies that I own, I have here with me at the moment. 2 are also Kindle versions or digital ebook versions. So I'm going to start with the digital versions first, just because I can pop them up on the screen somewhere around here. So the first recommendation that I've got for you guys is A Portable Paradise by Roger Robinson. This book is something that I've read like fairly recently, but it was refreshing for me because, as you'll see as I start talking about my actual like physical collection of books, I like to go into history a little bit. I like to have copies of what people said, and I like to understand people and their history and figures in history too, right? This is different for me because this is a poetry book and there's a lot of different bodies of work by different creatives, but it's obviously published by Roger Robinson. But it's great to understand the experience of black people in Britain in particular through artworks and through their own art forms. Because we can learn about history and we can learn about the contextual facts and we can learn about, what happened at this point and who it affected where. But actually studying and looking at people's individual accounts is something, it just hits differently. So if you're into your poetry and if you're trying to get into learning a little bit more about race and representation, this is your book, Roger Robinson's A Portable Paradise. My second recommendation is another digital ebook. I think it's a paperback as well. It's by Arlisha Norwood and it is called 51 Black Heroes, or it might just be called Black Heroes, I'm sorry. It's called Black Heroes, and in the book, there are 51 influential black people from ancient Africa all the way through to modern day America, which, we might not necessarily be aware of. Now, it was intended to be, read by children, but I love the book and I learned something about people that I thought I knew, a fair amount about. So just because it's a kid's book doesn't mean you shouldn't be kind of, entertaining it as a learning resource. I learned a lot and I read it fairly quickly too. It's a really short read. So I would definitely recommend that book as well. That is Arlisha Norwood's Black Heroes. So now we move on to my actual physical collection of books, or at least 3 books from my physical collection. I'm going to start off with my personal favourite. And if you know me, if you've come to any of my Zazi workshops, you will know who my favourite of all time is, and it just had to be, so that I've got a book that has his work in as well. And it's this book. It's Malcolm X by Any Means Necessary. Now, this isn't a book written by Malcolm X. It is a documentation of the speeches that he made during the last 2 years of his life. So, for me, this is probably my favourite Malcolm book for a number of reasons, but at this particular time in Malcolm's life, he was talking about things as Malcolm X, not as Malcolm X from the Nation of Islam. So there's 2 distinct Malcolms in history, or some would say there's more, but for me, there's the Nation of Islam Malcolm X, who had his work and who had his speeches crafted around the religious and political needs of the Nation of Islam, because it was a religious organization. It had rules, it had structure, and Malcolm had to fit within those rules. Absolutely fair enough. But when Malcolm departed from the Nation of Islam, he started to really speak about things that he couldn't necessarily speak about or couldn't share as much about whilst he was in the Nation of Islam. And for me, that was when Malcolm really started coming for everybody and started, he was already obviously very prevalent on the scene, but this separated him as, in my opinion, the greatest of all time when it came to the arguments he was putting forward. So that is my third recommendation. I could talk about Malcolm X all day, so I'm going to try and cut it as short as I can. This book here, Elijah Lawal, The Clapback, my fourth recommendation. This was actually a gift to me by Editorial Intelligence. So if you guys are watching this video, thank you so much. It is a fantastic, fantastic read for a number of different reasons. Elijah Lawal is a great guy. He's a funny guy. He's really, really friendly. And this book is just so well written and so informative on the racial stereotypes that we have in British culture in particular. So I read this, as a person of color myself, and the stereotypes in there have impacted me at various points in my life. And to see it articulated and the arguments kind of, based on history and actual hard facts, 2 thumbs up for me. If you want to learn some of the racial stereotypes that are in Britain, and if you've been a victim of racial stereotyping, this is your book, because it literally covers everything from food preferences or assumptions about food preferences all the way through to stereotypes about sports, stereotypes about criminality. It's fantastic, so give it a check. My final book is this biography of Muhammad Ali. So as you can see, it is a big book. And, I've recommended this book for a number of reasons, but mostly because if you're trying to get into race and representation and start to learn a little bit about, the history of race representation, racism in particular, a good way for me that I like to recommend to people who are trying to get into it for the first time is to study somebody that you look up to or somebody that you're interested by and go through their story. This is what I did with Muhammad Ali. So I am a huge boxing MMA guy. I've always been fascinated by Ali's ability to speak and to command and perform. I read his book, I read his biography, and not only did I learn about his life, but I also learned about his life contextually around racism, the politics of racism, and what it was like to be black in America. So if you're trying to understand race and racism indirectly, I would suggest picking up a book of somebody that you look up to and learn about their life, but also how their life was impacted by racism. It's a way to learn about these areas indirectly, get enough information so that it can perk your interest to explore things further. So that is my 5th and final recommendation. Those are my top 5. I could honestly talk about my books all day, but if you have any recommendations for me, drop a comment. I'm always looking to learn. If you want me to do another one with my other books, let's do it. I'm always down to speak about books. And I will include all of the books and the links to the books if you want to purchase them in the description, so we can go away, learn, and level up ourselves and our ability to help ourselves and our community. So I'll leave you guys here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys in a future video, no doubt. Have fun, stay safe, and I'll catch you soon.